Hello and welcome to Hopeful Conversations. I'm Vicki Montague, and today I'm joined by Toni McIntyre. And Toni is quite a magical person. I hope you don't mind me introducing you as a magical person.
It's quite lovely.
I think I only came across you. I was aware of you for a while, and then we started chatting a few months ago. And the conversations that I've had with Toni, and I've recently just completed, or near enough completed, a course with her as well online. Yeah, she's just got so much incredible passion and love to share. And it occurred to me that having her on here would be transformative to those people that listen. And it's a little bit, I think it might be a bit different from the usual podcasts. I don't know for sure, but I don't know that there's necessarily a health story here, but more of a transformation, more of a moving from a fearful, scared sort of existence, I guess, like most of us live, to a one of complete freedom. That's how it appears to me. One of being of service in the world, of beautifully giving to people and allowing life to flow through you. Is that fair to say, Toni?
It's close, Becky. It is. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that beautiful introduction.
Yeah, and I'd love you to just tell your story, really, and that's what this podcast is all about, storytelling, I guess. Where you came from, what was going on in your life, how your life looked before, and now what your life looks like, and what happened in the middle, I guess. What happened in that transition from perhaps a life of not necessarily struggle, but not of ease, to a life that seems very full of ease.
I love the storytelling part. That sounds light and fun. And thank you for having me here. Yeah, so I think it was only recently, perhaps even the beginning of this year, that I realized how much of my life I had lived in huge fear, sometimes terror for a large amount of it, but it was so underground, it was so hidden, masked, by goodness knows how many, how many masks. I have no idea. That if you'd said to me, "Oh, you're an anxious person," I would have said, "Me, no, not at all." And I think as well, it wasn't just then. I mean, I saw a while back when I came into the principles, understanding that I had had massive anxiety earlier on in my life, but it seemed at that point that that was all gone. And obviously there's layers of all of these things, so it had definitely shifted. So what was I scared of? I'm just sort of wondering. I think I was scared of life. I was scared. I was petrified of suffering, whether it was physical, emotional, or mental. So I spent all my life running away from that, which doesn't leave much to run towards, really, or nothing real. So I was just suddenly thinking, well, what did that look like? So that would look like a lot of mental anguish about imaginary what will people say, or what if I put something into the world, what does that mean? Is it going to be okay? I remember when in one of my trainings we used to use the expression, what is it called? I've got a block. Like an emotional hangover. Am I saying the right thing? You know, you share something, and then afterwards there's this, oh, why did I do that? Shouldn't have exposed myself like that. You know, so I don't know if I'm using the right words, but it was like that. Emotional hangover. That's what it was. There was a lot of that. And I think specifically in my business, it was hugely paralyzing, because everything and anything that was a good idea, and I seem to have a lot of good ideas, but they would be suffocated before seeing the light of day. Or if I managed to get it out, it was so exhaustingly painful, the whole process, that I didn't really want to repeat it in a great hurry. So yeah, a lot of as Claire Diamond would say, a lot of selfing, a lot of self-doubt and guilt and shame and stories, and the big shift for me came from playing the 90-day service game, which really, just in a nutshell, is built for this. Although I didn't really understand. I just thought I was going to learn how to serve, which I really wanted to do. But so for those who don't know this, the 90-day service game is where you commit for 90 days to serve full out, loving people fiercely, listening to them, helping. A lot of people ask me, oh, does that mean you did that all for free? And it's got nothing to do with money, but it sounds like it does to a lot of people. And I had the same question. So no, sometimes it was assessing. Sometimes it was the greatest service was to charge somebody. And sometimes it would be just doing something for love. So it was just it was really getting present and seeing, well, what would be of service at this time. And there is a caveat to the game, which is that you find your greatest fear, and then you have to play. You have to go play there. So pretty much, we say we remove it, but it takes a while for that to sink in. So mine was big trouble. That I was going to get into big trouble. That it took me a little while to find it. And that was the fear that pretty much drove the whole show of my life. That if I put my head out of water too much, if I stand out, if I'm too loud, if I'm in any way out there, I'm going to get into big trouble. And if you think about it, it's sort of like 100% living in 100% victim mode. That's what it's like.
Yeah.
So, because you're just going to get into trouble. So you're the one. And so in the service game, we commit to serving people, loving them fiercely, even though, and my game was even though I'm going to get into big trouble. So once that happens, you keep going there. Every single time you notice the fear arising, and it was so strong, there were times I wanted to, I'd have to do deep breathing around the garden. And but you're going to get into trouble anyway, so you go and do that thing, whatever it is. And that was the dissolving of it, for starters. The dissolving of that particular program. It really helps bring them into the light of consciousness. That's what it's doing. And And then there was room for a whole lot of others to surface as well.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of running away, I got to really love going to those places. So now when something comes up, there's a little bit of an excited zing of like, ooh, I wonder what'll open up on the other side of this.
Wow. And I'm really curious if you have like an example of, because to me it's like, how can helping someone get you into trouble like that in my
Yeah.
reality? Like I can't see that. Like, how can helping someone get into trouble? So do you have an example of something that came up that you had you went to do even though you thought you were
Yeah.
going to get into trouble?
Yeah, because I mean, it is ridiculous. I mean, these programs do not make any
No.
sense when you look at them in the cold light of day, do they? But so mine could be, I want to create a program, and there would be this lovely idea, rush of, oh, that sounds like a fun thing to do, and then the moment it would be putting it out there, creating something, contacting people who might be interested, it wasn't even words until I brought it into the service game. It was just this awful sort of all systems shut down,
Yeah.
and this dreadful feeling of like, oh, don't go there, you're going to get into trouble. But it didn't have words in the beginning. So it could be like that, or it could be that I heard that a friend was having a bad time, and where I get the thought I should reach out and offer to help her in whatever way. And it could show up there, no, don't do that, big trouble. You'll get into big trouble, just don't go there. It could happen, it particularly showed its head where creativity was, wanting to play out. That was the greatest place, which is why serving, I suppose, is such a powerful way. Yeah, or serving, coaching around money, asking for money, fees. That was a huge place that it would come up. So I'd have somebody wanting to work with me, and they'd get to that point of, well, what are your fees? And it would just be almost the suffocating thing of, I would almost avoid those conversations. You know, I could see somebody for free for weeks rather than go anywhere near that.
Yeah.
It's not a good business plan.
I just love what you're describing, because you're describing every human being, right? That there's stuff going on in the background. There's unconscious beliefs and conditioning and experiences that have been gathered over the years that then I don't know whether it came from you, the term like underground dictators. They're kind of like they're there. We don't know they're there, but our behavior flows from them. So like in your example, if there was the belief lurking around somewhere back here that you were going to get into trouble by doing certain things, it's totally logical that you wouldn't do those things, right? So your behavior would then be to avoid those things.
Yeah.
And I love what you're inviting people to see is that we get the opportunity to see what those things are that have been running the show in the background by doing it anyway. Like when we feel some resistance, being with that resistance, I guess, sitting with the sensation of resistance to allow the appearance of whatever the program is, whatever the story is, whatever the belief is, to pop into our awareness. Like when we're with the sensation,
Absolutely.
It brings that forward, right? Is that kind of what you're...
Yeah, definitely, because I had avoided it.
Yeah.
So even though it had been such a constant companion in a way,
Mm.
my entire experience of it was resistance.
Mm.
So I honestly did. It seems crazy that we live with these thought patterns that create these awful experiences within us,
Mm.
and yet we aren't even aware of it. That to me is just incredible. When I eventually started, as you say, just to be okay to experience it,
Mm.
to allow it to run its course through me. I mean, in the beginning, it was completely overpowering, and then it seemed to get bigger, like it was everywhere, like way worse than I'd ever. I had no idea. It was just being like in a room full of blown up balloons. Like everywhere you moved, there were another 8 bump that you were bumping into. That was, I thought I'm losing the plot here now. Like this is just totally offbeat. And thank goodness my beautiful coach Melissa Ford was there to. She'd obviously done this before. She was like, no, this is good. This is what's going to happen. And then experiencing, really submerging myself really in the awful feelings and seeing them for what they were, getting to explore that without resistance. That simple act opened up into such spacious freedom, where perhaps, and I mean, it's still an unfolding, and I'm sure it will be until the day that I leave the planet, but there's perhaps for the first time I get to show up in an authentic way without all the masks that were there to protect this terribly insecure idea.
Can you say more about that? Because I know there'll be people listening who kind of understand maybe on some level, but like, yeah, what do you mean by the masks that we wear to protect the idea?
That's such a big subject, isn't it, Vicki? Because they were also unseen.
Yep.
So there's definitely an innocence there in the fact. I mean, I'd heard about masks. I knew about them from a sort of psychological perspective and that kind of a thing. But I was completely blind to the masks that I would have to wear because this shaky idea of an identity that was so scared it was going to get into trouble. Those masks were its only protection, really. So I suppose they could look like fossiness. It could come out as pleasing, people pleasing, keeping everybody happy. What else? Avoidance, just not being available. We could call them shields. They were probably more like body shields. I think a mask was too little. These were big. So, I mean, it makes so much sense that the mind would create these things to protect it because it was so scared. It was living terrified that it was going to be seen for what it really was, and then there would be trouble. So there were all these amazing layers and layers of protection, trying to look smart, That would be, and definitely was another one, you know. Being the best, like I have to learn everything in this. then I'll be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Doing that next course, the next program, then and not that there's anything wrong with a program, but I've seen there's a big difference between doing a program because I really want to find out about that subject, and doing a program because it might make me look better. Well, then I'll know that one thing that I don't know now that's going to keep me safe tomorrow.
Then I'll be okay.
Then I'll be okay. Yeah.
Again, I'm thinking about people listening who might be very new to this conversation and exploration. And talk about the idea of self. Can you say more about that and what you've seen about that, I guess, through this unraveling that you've been through?
Yes, that's lovely. So I guess let's start with thought and how powerful that is, because if we can see, and we've all had that experience of how incredibly powerful our imagination is, and how incredibly powerful thought is, and seeing that the idea of who I was, with all my insecurities, with all the personalities that I thought made me up, made me different, made me unique, made me a Toni entity in this world. And my strengths and my gifts and all of that in my case was so incredibly insecure, because it was constantly teetering on the edge of a precipice of trouble. And the more I played this and the more I went into those scary places, the more I saw that it was really just created in thought. This idea of who I was actually didn't exist. It was a complete collection of thoughts, very well established thoughts, and of course we can add in things that we've been told as children, good things and bad things, you know. Silly things. I remember my mum saying to me again, "You're very good at seeing patterns." That became part of my character. I'm very good at seeing patterns, whatever that means.
Yeah.
That was one of the more innocuous ones, but there it is. And all those little ideas and big ideas that made up this completely fictitious illusion that I called me. And when I saw that none of that was true, because it all disappeared the closer I got to it. Then there was just freedom on the other side. Then there was just, let's say, divine energy, mind, if we're talking in principles language, or intelligence, life energy. There was that playing life, and I'm the witness of that, along for the ride. I am that, witnessing this ride. And there's so much freedom there, because suddenly there wasn't anything left to protect and defend, or wasn't anything to try and get attention either. All of that disappeared. And not completely, it's still disappearing. There's still elements, and I'm sure it's going to be that unfolding forever. But there was such a big space that opened up where now showing up in service is pure joy. And there isn't anything on it. Or when there is, it sort of disappears very quickly. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I just what came to me when you were talking was, I guess some people might understand the term ego as as the dissolution of that idea of self. That, you know, for some people it might feel quite like almost quite confronting when I was sort of hearing you describe the closer you got to that, to the thing that was in the way, almost the idea of you, the closer you got, it dissolved. And I could, you know, there was a part of me that sort of still was kind of like, oh my gosh, you know, like, so what is there left? But you then, you know, you then went on to kind of talk about what's left is life, is the energy behind this physical appearance in the world that is, I don't know, the more I explore, the more I wonder, you know, as formless energy, as the life force, that can't experience. You can't experience feelings or emotions or any of that stuff. So maybe that's what we're here for, as a physical entity, to feel all of that, to have that experience that the formless element of us can't have. The true kind of self, or whatever you want to call it, can't have that because it's invisible. And so I love what you're talking about, the allowing of it all, the being, the you know, that we can have all of that. That formless part of us, that isn't affected by fears or stuff going on, or, you know, like none of that. The emotions, the feelings, they don't hurt it. We can have it. And then when we're having it, we're living, right? without the narration of, this is bad, this is good, this is painful, this is distressing, this is horrible, I don't want this. Without any of that, there's just life, right? In form.
Exactly. Beautiful. You put that so beautifully. Yeah, I often think of it, it's like love is playing the game of life through us. Or through these bodies and these minds, and we're that love, and it can't be hurt by, it can feel as scared as it, you know, it gets to experience being terrified or happy. That was an interesting thing, Vicki. I also realized that my range of emotion was very limited before.
Yeah.
And I sort of, I didn't understand when people said that when they came more into this understanding, they got to experience life a whole lot more deeply. Like, I didn't have that experience, because what I realized was I was using, well, it's just a thought. The idea of thought just being a thought that creates a temporary reality as another avoidance technique to experience everything. So that has been huge, is being able to feel whatever,
Mm.
deeply, and knowing that that's what we're here for, that's beautiful.
I wonder if you can say a bit more about the thought being just a thought, sort of almost dismissal, because I know that lots of people listening to this will be familiar with the three principles. And I know that comes up a lot. Oh, it's just thought. It's just thought. It's okay. It's just thought. It will go. So what did you see about that? Like,
well, I definitely saw that I think one of the reasons it was so appealing to me was because I could use it to numb myself again. And I remember hearing Michael Neal say, don't say it's just a thought. It's like saying, well, it's just an atomic bomb. And I love that because I think it's really true. And when we dismiss thought in that way, we're really dismissing life, the entire experience of life. Because if our experience isn't here to be fully lived, then what is the point? And we can do that, like I did, and lead a shadow life in the shallows, just play around there a little bit. Or we can go and dive right in and get the whole lot.
get in the mess.
Get in the mess. And find out that actually it's got its own precious beauty, and it brings treasures with it each time. Yeah.
Love that. I'm wondering, with sort of limited time, what would you say to someone who was in the grips of anxiety and overwhelming perceived negative emotions? What would be the invitation, I guess, that you might give to someone like that to step into what you're starting to see more of?
Yeah, if I could go back and say, speak to myself, I'd say, when I was in that grip, I would firstly say, stop resisting it, honey. And see if you can get to know it. And really get familiar with it. What would happen? What would happen if you sit in that horrendous fear and really get present and for me, what has helped me is to love the child thought patterns that are caught in the grip of that fear. Like really be the adult, show up and make space for them, and like you would a child who's having a temper tantrum. Move the furniture out the way. And lovingly hold that space and just see what happens. And then do that again. And maybe again.
And again, yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and it sounds so easy yet so challenging to the idea of what we think we are.
Yeah.
But it's that there's something around well, how is it working for you right now as you resist as you resist it. Like I lived a lot in resistance, and how did that work out? Well, I just got smaller and smaller, and my world got smaller, and it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
And this, I guess, is like, well, if you don't want that anymore, why not play around with this? It's almost like, what can you lose? Like there's sort of, for me, it's the invitation to play more, to play around, to loosen the grip of seriousness of things looking like they're so bad.
Yes.
And
I love that. Play around. I've got that phrase, and I don't know where it came from. Somebody famous, probably. But living life in full color.
Yeah.
And as you say, as you loosen that grip and you stop resisting, yeah, all sorts of magic can happen.
So we are running out of time, and I'm really conscious that I want people to know how to contact you if they want to talk about this further, or if they want to learn more about the service game. I know that you run programs around that. So what's the best way of people contacting you or finding out more about what you're up to in the world?
Probably through my email or my WhatsApp. I am slowly getting a website together, which is, a place I'm playing in at the moment. Sort of like the third one, like all the rest, start again. So getting there. But my cell number or my email. Do you want me to give those now?
If you read out your email, and then I'll put in the notes below your WhatsApp number as well, and then people can contact you how they want. So what's your email address?
So it's Antonia, ANTONIA.Helen78@gmail.com.
Perfect. And like I say, I'll put that in the notes. And it's been such a pleasure talking to you. I could talk to you for ever, like all of my guests that come on. I always think I could go on for such a long time, but hopefully that's been helpful for somebody to hear. And like if they want more, or they're curious to know more, then obviously you're there, and I'm sure you'd be willing to speak to anybody because you're lovely.
Absolutely. And thank you, Vicki. I just love talking with you too.
Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.